Imagine you are looking at a giant puzzle. When you look at the pieces one by one, they just look like colorful shapes. They don't seem to mean anything special. But what happens when you start snapping those pieces together? Suddenly, a picture starts to form. Sometimes that picture is a beautiful landscape, but sometimes the picture reveals a secret that someone tried very hard to hide. Today, we are going to look at a puzzle like that. It is a puzzle about the royal family. Usually, we are told a fairy tale. We are told about a prince falling in love with a beautiful actress. It sounds perfect. It sounds like magic. But what if there were missing puzzle pieces that change the whole story? What if the prince and the actress didn't just meet by luck? What if their paths crossed a long time ago in a dark and mysterious world of rich people, private boats, and hidden parties? We have found some of those missing pieces. When you put them on the table, they tell a very different story. It is a story that makes people whisper. It is a story about connections that should not exist. So get ready. We are going to look at the clues, the dates, and the strange moments that don't add up. We are going to ask the question that is making everyone nervous. It is time to see the real picture hidden behind the headlines. The headline is the first thing you see. It is the big sentence at the top of the news that makes you stop walking and look. When you read this specific headline, it shocks you. It feels like these two names should never be in the same sentence together. On one side, you have Meghan Markle. She was a famous actress from Hollywood who married a prince. On the other side, you have Prince Andrew. He is the Queen's son, but he is in a lot of trouble. He has a dark cloud of bad behavior hanging over him. These two people seem like they come from completely different planets. They are worlds apart. But then an author named Tom Bauer comes along. He brings what he calls receipts. In this case, receipts aren't just papers from a store. They are proof. He has bits of history. He has dates of trips. He has names of people who showed up in places they shouldn't be. When you take all these little scraps of paper and put them together, you start to see something scary. You stumble into a question that is so shocking, most people are afraid to say it out loud. The question is this: were Meghan and Prince Andrew actually connected since the year 2012? That is the secret whisper. That is the sentence that hangs in the air like thick smoke after a fire. Linked since 2012. The words sound impossible. It sounds like it cannot be true. But here is the big problem. Once you hear those words, you cannot forget them. They stay in your brain. When we look back at Meghan's life before she ever met Prince Harry, we find a path. It is like a trail of breadcrumbs in the woods. And guess where that trail goes? It circles back to Prince Andrew's world. It happens again and again. This is not just people telling rumors or making up stories. These are facts. These are timelines. These are real people who were actually there and saw things. So let us start at the very beginning of this mystery. The first strange moment does not happen at a fancy party. It does not happen on a big boat in the ocean. It happens inside the Queen's home, Buckingham Palace. Meghan is standing there with Prince Harry. They are standing next to the Queen, who is the most powerful grandmother in the entire world. In that moment, Meghan turns to Harry. She whispers a question to him. She asks, "Who is that man standing next to your grandma?" The man she was asking about was Prince Andrew. He is the Queen's actual son. He is Harry's uncle. He is a man who had been famous for his whole life. He was on television and in newspapers for decades, sometimes for good things and sometimes for bad things. Yet Meghan said she did not know who he was. To her, the Queen wasn't a queen. She was just Harry's grandma. Meghan wanted to look innocent. She wanted to look simple, like she didn't know anything about the royals. That is how she wanted to look, but here is the surprise twist. The more you look back through Meghan's past, the harder it is to believe her. It becomes very hard to believe she didn't know exactly who Prince Andrew was. That innocent question she asked Harry starts to look like acting. It looks like a performance in a movie. Before she was a duchess, she was just an actress who wanted to be famous. A man who writes about famous people in Britain remembers meeting her. This was years before she was on the TV show Suits. He remembers having drinks with her. He said she was quiet and calm, but she was very focused. She wanted one thing very badly. She wanted to be in the newspapers. She wasn't shy about it at all. She told him she wanted to be famous in Britain. She wanted her name to be known. She was looking for a way to get in. She was already thinking like a general in a war. She had a plan. She talked to the writer about her divorce. She talked about how hard it was to date. She even talked about a famous soccer player named Ashley Cole. But then the writer mentioned that Ashley Cole had some messy rumors about his own divorce. When he said that, Meghan's face changed. Her face dropped. It looked like she had been caught playing a card she didn't want anyone to see. Even back then, Meghan was testing doors. She was trying to turn handles to see which door would open for her. Her goal was always the same. She wanted access. She wanted to be inside the special VIP rooms, and it didn't take long for her path to cross with groups of people much bigger than soccer players. This is where a man named Ewan comes into the story. Most people have never heard his name, but people on the inside whisper about him. He is a billionaire. He travels all over the world. He is a man who is very close friends with Prince Andrew. He is the one who reportedly took Andrew on trips to Thailand a long time ago. This was before all the bad news about Jeffrey Epstein came out. This is where Meghan's story starts to overlap with their story. Meghan went to college at Northwestern. She was in a sorority, which is a club for college girls, but her club wasn't just about parties and friendship. Some of her sorority sisters remember something strange. They said Meghan would disappear for weeks at a time. Then she would come back with wild stories. She talked about trips on big yachts in the Mediterranean Sea. She talked about fancy weekends. She talked about rich friends. One of the names that was whispered in the background was Ewan. It was not just an accident. Meghan once admitted she went to Thailand in 2001. That trip happened at a time that was very close to when Prince Andrew was there on his questionable visits. Years later, photos and rumors would place Meghan on yachts. She was seen with a woman named Karina, who was the girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein at the time. She was seen with other people who were part of Prince Andrew's circle of friends. The picture we are seeing is not neat and tidy. It is messy. It is broken into pieces. If you look at just one piece, it is easy to say it means nothing. But when you zoom out and look at the whole thing, you see something different. You see Meghan quietly brushing against the same world Prince Andrew lived in. She was doing this long before she ever stood in front of Harry. On paper, Meghan's life looks perfect. She studied theater. She worked for 5 weeks at the U.S. Embassy in Argentina. She finished college. It looks clean and respectful. But here is a detail she never talks about. Right after she was in Argentina, she signed up for a program to study in Spain for 3 months. The records from the university prove it. The dates match perfectly, but Meghan has never mentioned this. She has never shown photos. She tells no fun stories about it. She has no posts about a host family she loved. There is nothing. Why would she be silent? According to her old friends, those 3 months were not about reading books. They were not about studying. They were about yachts in the Mediterranean Sea. They were about staying in big, private houses. It was travel that a normal student with no money could not afford. She would vanish for weeks. Then she would reappear with stories about meeting billionaires and royals. At the time, her friends thought she was making it up. They thought it was too wild to be true. But years later, names like Ewan, Prince Andrew's friend, started showing up. These names were connected to the same places and the same times. Suddenly, those wild stories started sounding very real. They sounded too exact to be made up. So the question we have to ask is, what was Meghan really doing during those missing months? Let's fast forward to the year 2012. Meghan is on the show Suits. She is not the main star. She's not the most important person on the show. At best, she is a lawyer in the background who gets to say a few lines in each episode. Yet somehow she is flying in the best seats on the plane to Hong Kong. She is acting like she is the face of the whole show. She's hanging out with very famous media people. She's being treated like a superstar. And then comes the strangest detail of all. She does an interview, but now that interview has completely vanished. It has been wiped off the internet. In that interview, Meghan casually mentioned that royalty was around. She didn't mean royalty in general. She meant specifically Prince Andrew. And guess what? Prince Andrew was confirmed to be in Hong Kong at that exact same time. There is no official paper saying they were seen together. There is no headline in the news. There is no photo. But witnesses at the party said they were in the same rooms. They were at the same dinners. They were at the same gatherings. It is the pattern we keep seeing. Meghan moves in spaces where the elite people are, but she always leaves almost no trace. She leaves just whispers. She leaves just enough to make us ask questions. By the year 2015, Meghan had created a strange kind of life. She wasn't a top-level famous actress. She wasn't the main star on the red carpet. But somehow, she kept showing up at the most exclusive places where you have to be invited. Take a look at Istanbul. There was a grand opening for a place called Soho House. It was a magnet for rich people, royals, and Hollywood stars. Meghan posed for a photo with a famous actor named Eddie. The newspaper later ran the picture. But here is the crazy part. The newspaper listed the name of every single person in that photo except for Meghan Markle. She was literally invisible to the press. They didn't even write her name. That same weekend, both Prince Charles and Prince Harry were reportedly in Turkey. The timing is very strange, but what tells us even more is the man who owns Soho House. His name is Ron Burkle. He is a billionaire. He is the same man who people say flew Meghan on his private plane to a wedding in Jamaica. He is the same man who has deep ties to Prince Andrew's friends. Burkle opened doors that other people could not open, and Meghan walked straight through them. It wasn't just fancy parties. Meghan's presence reached into the darker parts of Prince Andrew's life, specifically the yachts. There's a photo of Meghan. She's wearing a white hat and sitting on the deck of a boat in the Mediterranean. She's smiling next to people whose names are warning signs today. Karina was there. She was connected to the bad scandals. Jeffrey Epstein was reportedly nearby. Some people say Prince Andrew might have joined for part of that trip. It is not a photo from a gossip magazine. It is not a photo taken by a screaming fan. It is quiet. It is private. It is the kind of scene that only comes out years later when people start connecting the dots. And again, Meghan is right there. She is present, but she is not the star. Few people saw her. Even fewer remember her. When Meghan wasn't on yachts or sneaking into private parties, she was moving through the world of fashion. She showed up at Fashion Week shows. She mingled at a royal ballet event in New York. She wore clothes made by brands owned by powerful people's friends. On the surface, it looked like she was just meeting people for work, but the details matter. In the newspapers, she wasn't called a TV star. She wasn't introduced as a celebrity. She was simply called model actress. Why does that matter? Because it means Meghan wasn't rising up naturally like other stars. She was being placed there. Someone was guiding her. Someone was ushering her into circles where shaking the right hand meant everything, and those circles weren't random. Again and again, they linked back to Prince Andrew's world. They linked to billionaires and insiders. They linked to people who had the kind of access Meghan wanted. And then came the trip to Jamaica. It was for a wedding that Harry attended. But while Harry flew on a normal plane in the cheap seats, Meghan arrived in style. She was flown privately by Ron Burkle. On the guest list for the wedding were Prince Andrew's daughters and Prince Andrew himself. But if you search for photos, you will find nothing. No Andrew, no daughters. They were there, but they were kept out of the pictures on purpose. Meghan was once again inside the circle, but not officially admitted. She was present, but nobody gave her credit. It is the same pattern over and over again. She doesn't just stumble into these events by accident. Someone brings her. Someone protects her. Someone erases the tracks when they need to. By now, the story is hard to deny. Meghan's path wasn't random. It was a calculated drift into elite circles tied to Prince Andrew. From Soho House parties to yachts linked to scandal, she was there. From erased interviews to invisible appearances at galas, she was always there but never fully seen. And when she finally married Harry, the insiders weren't shocked. They weren't even surprised. The only surprise was that it had taken this long for it to happen. So when Tom Bauer shows his proofs, and when whispers start swirling about Meghan and Andrew knowing each other since 2012, it is not about one single photo. It is not about one single rumor. It is about a pattern. It is a pattern of her being present that goes back for years. Think about that moment when she said she didn't know who Andrew was. Maybe she wasn't being innocent at all. Maybe that was the smartest and most planned move she ever made. It makes you wonder how much of the fairy tale was real, and how much was a script written long before the wedding bells ever rang.